Okay, so Andrea showed you some examples, and we also saw in the other presentations some examples of how different InstantAtlas reports can look. There is so much that you can do to make them look different, but is all this functionality just kind of eye candy? No, it is there for a good reason. I think it's fair to say that local information systems cater for fairly sort of varied user groups. And of course, for those of you running local information systems, the dynamic reports will just be one part of your presentation layer. But design, I think, is so critical for people to extract information from the system. That's really why the system exists. So you have to do it in the right way. And there is a realization, of course, amongst all our customers that this is important. I think the quote from Stephen here, our esteemed host, this quote perfectly kind of encapsulates it. Creating a place, so talking about new info, creating a place where users across the authority can access council data easily and present it to them in a simple to use and understand way. And of course, systems will have a bias towards exactly who they're kind of catering for. Some will be maybe more for analysts within partner organisations. But I think it's fair to say that most, if not all of them, will at some level cater for a fairly basic type of user. So is there any evidence that systems are or aren't achieving in this goal to deliver data in a simple to use and understand way? I was really encouraged to hear that, especially in the GLA presentation, that people are really thinking about this and going out and collecting feedback, because in the GeoWise support team, we don't have direct contact with the end users. You guys are our channels for understanding how the end users interact with the systems. And it's not often that we come across these user surveys necessarily. There's no necessarily a reason for you to send them to us, but there are two that I came across recently. One that was carried out in 2009 as an MA dissertation, but I think it's since been published as a journal. And it's called The Use and Value of Local Information Systems, a case study of the Milton Keynes Intelligence Observatory. And it's written by somebody called Alfire Oakford, who's a systems analyst at Milton Keynes. And there's a link posted on the Community of Practice forum very recently, and that's how I became aware of it. The Milton Keynes system's not actually InstantAtlas based, but the issues are the same. And actually, if you look at their homepage, many of the features are similar to an InstantAtlas server system. So they have lists of themes, business, census, crime, and so on. They've got analysis and mapping links across the top. And they've got these social atlas, sort of various key resources there in the middle of the page. And there's a paragraph from Alifire's abstract that I thought I really wanted to kind of reduce the number of words on the slide, but I can't find a way to do it because they all count. There's been a rise in the development of local information systems. However, little research exists on users' perspective of the value they obtain from these systems. Such research is essential if the full potential of these systems is to be realised, and to identify how such systems may better meet the needs of their users. So that was 2009, so things may have moved on a little bit since then, but I'm not always sure how much these surveys are kind of put into the, onto the website where many people can look at them and benefit from their conclusions. Now, I've just cherry-picked one output from the report. It's a long report, a huge number of pages. But this graph just illustrates the question was, how do you find understanding data displayed in the mapping system? And on a scale of 1, easy, through to 5, difficult, most people went for 3, but there's still quite a lot of 4s there, so people are finding the mapping difficult to use. And one sentence that I pulled out of Alifire's results: users are experiencing difficulty in finding data and information, and in the use and interpretation of statistical and mapping data. And the other survey was carried out in October of last year by the team behind Nottingham Insight, which is an InstantAtlas server system. Wendy Conabare was kind of mainly responsible for that, so go and talk to her if you want to know more about the results. Again, it was mostly council users who responded to the survey, and just one output: knowledge, experience of utilising statistics and interpreting data. You can see that quite a few of the respondents said they had a reasonable amount or a lot of knowledge, but there are still a significant proportion who are saying they only have a little experience in utilising statistics, and that's within the council. And Wendy says in her results, there is a possible need to review how users access a site. Could it be possible to direct those users with limited statistical knowledge to different areas of the site? Well, yes, it is possible to do that using our user management module. And the point is that there's a bit of doubt coming out of these user surveys. There's a bit of, I should be fair and say that broadly they found that the systems are delivering great value to their users, but there is a usability issue in some areas. So what do you do about that? Well, as I said, there's a vast number of features in our software for changing the way the interface works and tailoring it to your user groups. In a 10-minute slot, there's no way I can go into any detail. We document all the features in our user guides. So what I want to do is make a fairly kind of broad point about a possible way that you can optimize how your users extract data from the system. And you can plot your user groups on, I would argue, that's the two main factors that are going to determine whether that's successful or not, and that's the statistical ability and the computing ability of your users. So right down near the origin, we've got the citizens, or people in community groups, who I think, although they're a very broad user group, you have to kind of plot them down there and assume that they really don't have that much experience of statistics and using complex computing systems to get hold of the data. Maybe just slightly above them, policymakers, again, don't spend most of their time playing around with IT systems and maybe not hugely statistical. We heard in one of the presentations, middle managers don't want spreadsheets full of absolute numbers, they just want shaded, red, green, blue, amber. A quick way for them to interpret the output. Journalists seem to be taking, increasingly taking an interest in these systems. Again, they may have sort of limited use of IT systems. The analysts in partner agencies, well, clearly they're going to know a lot about statistics, but how good is their skill with computing systems? Trained users are the only group I could think of who might not be very statistical, but actually very good at using the system, because you put them through a training course, so they know how to access the outputs. Whether they have the kind of statistical mindset to interpret them is a different matter. And then the IAS team up in the corner who know everything, they're great at statistics and great at computing. And if they're doing a lot of the internal work, then that's fine. Okay, so the next step then is to think about, on the same axes, think about the different outputs you can produce with our system, with the InstantAtlas server system. Now, there are lots of clouds here and the text is quite small. The point's not really what the clouds say, but again, it's the process of mapping the different outputs you can generate onto your user groups to make sure that there's a fit there. So down near the origin, we've got quick profiles. They're very easy to generate. You just either click a hard link on the home page, it goes straight into a profile, or the user might put in their postcode, and then it will bring them a profile that's for their area of interest. And if that profile uses mostly text and images, I guess I defy anyone not to be able to extract some information from that. But as you make them more statistical, they can still be easy to access, but they start to use tables and charts, or ranks and scores. And at the top of my axis, statistical axis, I've got confidence in this, that you can't really expect just Joe blogs to really extract much meaning from those. Data views, maybe a little more difficult to generate than profiles because you have more options when you get to the data view. But again, those can be complex or they can be simple. If they just have maps and charts in them, probably not too bad. As they go on to use spine or radar charts, or bubble plots and funnel plots, that's going to require a lot more kind of interpretation and a more analytical process for the user. And then over on the right-hand side, the clouds represent outputs that are accessed through the advanced wizards. And that's a lot of clicking through steps. And those are great. I'm not saying don't use them, but they're just targeted for a different audience. They are for those analysts who really want great flexibility about generating an output, but don't want to be given a packaged view where they can't add things in and take things out as they want. So these might seem like obvious things, but quite often I come to a system and if I put myself in the shoes of a very basic user, I'm confronted by all these modules and all of these outputs, even within a particular module, outputs, some of which are statistical and some of which are not, but not channeled in. And a user might just bounce off the system and go somewhere else if that's their first experience and they can't extract data from it. So the user management module is a way that you can kind of help your users in, because it allows you to determine when anyone hits the site, whether if they're not logged in, you can control what modules they can see, and within those modules, what outputs. And if they are registered, then again, you can put them into very specific user groups where you've defined what modules and content will appear. Okay, so it really is a fundamental module and critical to how the whole system kind of delivers data to your different users. So in summary, for me, getting the most out of your InstantAtlas products really does equal users extracting information effectively. I don't think you can have one without the other. So you must design your IAS system around the statistical and computing ability of your users. Personally, I feel those are the two things you really have to consider. And finally, an important point is surveying your users, because gathering quick statistics on how much individual outputs have been hit is great, but it doesn't tell you anything about what happens once somebody's hit that output. Did they find it useful? They might not. They might have not understood it and left the system and they won't be back. So the only way to really get that sort of information is to go out and survey and annoy your users. And that would ultimately, I think, lead to you getting the most out of your InstantAtlas products. Actually, we do a lot around the design of the interface in our training courses. I have to thank Justin for kind of mentioning that during his presentation and saying what a great training session we had with Dot. We do the same for InstantAtlas Server, and I think you had a couple of points you wanted to mention, Andrew.
There are just two more slides. I don't know how many of you have registered to our InstantAtlas forum, but if you have been there recently, you might have realized over the time that there's not actually too much happening there. So with the social media having moved on to different means of communication, we sort of adapted to this as well. So you can now, if you want to stay on top of what's happening in the InstantAtlas world, there are a few options that we provide on the screen. You can follow us on Twitter, or just log into the WordPress blog and subscribe there. With the RSS feed, you will get the contents of the blog and of our newsletter directly to your mailbox. You have that, and with Google Plus, you can also access the information. So that was the one. So let me see, I'm distracting, so I'm leaving it up for a little bit longer. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have a special offer on at the moment, which means we have 10% discount on our trainings. And for you to be able to get this, we would encourage you to fill in the feedback form that is part of your delegate pack. So just give it back to us or send it with a post if you don't have the time today, and put your name, or at least the name of your organization on it, that we know who's entitled for the 10% discount for the training, and that it applies for foundation course or advanced courses, and however you want to.